How's it going? My name is Jason, and I just recently bought this 2004 Lexus GX. It is a 21-year-old vehicle, and in the videos talking about this, picking it up, and doing a walk around of it, the most common question that I got from you guys was, what should I be looking out for on a GX470 when I'm looking to purchase it? So I've looked at many forums for months and months before I actually bought this. I've compiled a list of things that you should look out for when buying this because these are very old vehicles and they do have some pain points, some common problems. So let's go ahead and break into it and take a look at the things that I think you should be looking at when purchasing a GX470.
All right, so the first one is going to be whether or not the belts were done on here. So this is only at 100,000 miles. I bought it at 99, but these realistically should be changed every 90 or so thousand miles on them. Now this is actually, for being a 2004, really low miles. I think when I bought it, it was at like 99, 98, something like that. I think I'm at 102 now, but this belt, if it's, around 90, 100,000 miles, it should be done around that time. If it's at 180, it should be done again. Every 90,000 miles, this will need to be done. Sometimes it'll have a sticker on it that will say, done at this time. Mine does not have that. Now, I don't know that I would 100% trust a sticker saying that, but mine was actually listed on the Carfax, having been done at 85. So in another 90,000 miles, I will have to do that belt service. At the time of filming this, it is roughly about $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to do that whole service. But that is why I would always get a Carfax, because like I said, mine was listed on there as having been done, I think last year, So another one to look out for is the oil change. I would just go ahead and do that automatically. Like whatever you're buying, just automatically do the oil change as soon as you get it. It had shown on the Carfax that it had just been done about 2,000 miles ago, so I wasn't too worried. So I just went ahead and did that right off the rip. But I would say check for the service records, but if you don't have that, even if you do have that, just go ahead and change the oil as soon as you buy a new vehicle. A really nice thing about oil changes is they're going to check your connections on your batteries, top off your fluid, stuff like that, top off your washer fluid, that is, and they'll check some components. So after that, you're going to want to look at the frame if you can. So if you're buying it from a distance, you're probably not going to be able to check that super easily. Try to get some frame pictures. If it's a dealership, they may not give you that, especially if there is some frame rust on it. They're probably not going to want to give you that, and they'll know that someone dumber than you will probably fall for it and buy it. So try your best to get some pictures. If you are in person, go ahead and get up underneath here and look. Check out the frame and make sure everything's good. Now, I got really, really lucky with this one. You get a little bit of rust here, but this is going to be probably the most heat there, so that's just going to rust quicker. But that's still just going to be surface rust, not an issue. Now, I will say, look online and make sure that you understand the difference between surface rust and actual damage, because sometimes surface rust will look like actual, serious rust. You find, like this one is surprising. I mean, it's a 2004, and, I can't really find much rust on here anywhere other than right there. So when I was looking at the GX, I was looking at a ton of these in person and online. Had thought I'd find the perfect one up in Philadelphia. They didn't have any pictures of the frames. If it's in New York, New Jersey, up in Canada, Philly, anything like that, the Rust Belt, it's probably going to have rust, but they aren't obligated to provide you pictures, so they may not do that. They had no pictures of the frame, and I'd asked over and over again for them. Finally, once I got them, that thing was rusted with holes in it, and they wanted $15,000. It was just outrageous. So definitely look for frame rust, and then make sure you understand the difference between actual rust and just surface rust, because there's no reason to discount a car because of surface rust. So if you are in person and the car's been sitting, especially if it's at a dealership, you want to check underneath and see if there's any leaks. Could be a number of different things. Could be transmission, could be, I don't know, some type of fluid just underneath, oil fluid, leaking, stuff like that. Now, there's a difference between just kind of a little bit of a weep and an actual leak. You can see on the rear differential, a little bit of a weep, but nothing serious down there. So I'm not really concerned, but I will be changing out that fluid here soon, which I'll talk about in a minute. After that, you'll want to look at CV boots, make sure there's no tears and no holes. I was very lucky on mine and no issues on the CV boots. So because this is IFS, you'll have the CV boots on the front, and then on the rear is going to be a differential. There are no CV boots to look at on the rear, but there is something on the rear that we should be checking out. Let's go back there. So from the factory, these had rear airbags, but this one luckily has been deleted and it does have a lift. However, if you get a GX that hasn't been converted, right where this little container is, you will have a airbag system right here. Now, I've already had that changed over. On a vehicle this old, they're definitely going to be out. So if they haven't gone out already, you're lucky, but you probably will have to replace them at some point. And the way you'll know that is the rear of the GX will actually sag. If you do have that, you can replace them with regular coilovers, just leave it at stock height, or you can do a 3-inch lift like this one with the Old Man Emu. And because that's a 3-inch lift, that is also going to have to change out in the front. But if you just do a coil conversion for this, you could potentially just do it in the rear here. If you just want to replace it with coils, it's not very expensive. But if you want to do a 3-inch lift like this, it is going to cost you. This isn't very relevant on mine because I have aftermarket wheels, but any vehicle from this era is going to have some, it has this kind of dry cracking that happens, this early 2000s stuff. It'll likely be messed up and you'll either have to leave it like it is because it's pretty much just aesthetic, or if it really bothers you, you can just sand it down and repaint it. Luckily, I had aftermarket wheels on here, so no issues there. These are pretty new as well, so I don't have any issues. So one of the things people always talk about on the forums is the non-nav versus the navigation. Now, this obviously did not come with it. This is an aftermarket Google, Apple CarPlay here, but originally this is the non-navigation. So when this came from the factory, this would have just been like a CD player and a couple buttons for the sound. But if you got the nav, then you would have a dash unit that was a little screen, a navigation, and that navigation is from whatever year you bought your car. So 2004 for this one, that navigation system is really outdated. Luckily on this one, I have the controls here to do the AC, the heat, and all of that. But in the navigation units, you actually have it inside of the navigation. So if anything goes wrong, you lose all control of your heat, your AC. Everybody seems to want the non-nav because you can easily put one of these in and you don't have to, replace all these controls and stuff like that. Because if you get the navigation one, this from here down to here is one big giant unit. So if you want to replace that big navigation unit, then you'll have to get one that actually has the climate control in it. Big, huge unit is harder to find rather than just putting I think this is just a standard double din here. The downside to the non-nav is that you will have to install your own backup camera, which for me is right here on the rear bumper. But if you don't do a steel bumper, you'll have to find somewhere on the back of the GX to actually put that. Another one is going to be the seats. Now, a lot of these are just absolutely toast, and these here are actually in surprisingly good condition. There is cracking a little bit on here, but nothing too concerning. I actually probably could condition this leather and bring it back to looking like this right here, but to me, I just don't care that much. I probably still will do that here soon, maybe within the next year, once I recover from actually purchasing this. But there's a lot of things that you can do to fix this. You can just put a cover on it, you can recondition it. You may find actual holes and chunks taken out of this or just ripped open completely. If it's ripped open completely, you're probably just going to want to put a cover on it. If you're looking at a GX and they have pictures with the seat, with a seat cover on there, and they don't show you what's underneath, ask to see what's underneath, and if they don't show you, just assume it is going to be completely toast, or at the very least, it's probably going to look like this, which is completely livable. I would be fine like this, no issues, but I'll probably recondition it anyway. Now, another thing is going to be dash cracks. Now, the dash cracks are very common, and I was really lucky that I don't have any on there, but that's because the first owner really took care of this and maintained everything and did the recalls. Now, typically it's going to start somewhere in here, maybe in that corner, and it will spread across the whole dash. And realistically, it's just not great looking, and I don't think it really causes any issues other than just aesthetics. So you can either replace it, which is going to be several $1,000s, or you can just get a cover to put on it. Even though this is just aesthetic, it could be a sign of neglect from the previous owner, because this was a free fix from Toyota Lexus under a recall. So if it wasn't done, then what else were they ignoring? So I know if I'd bought a new vehicle and they had done a recall on it and it was a free fix, I didn't have to do anything, I just had to bring it in, I would 100% do that. There is the potential that the first owner or previous owner didn't notice any cracking, so they didn't take it in, and then the cracking happened after that, and then they were out of that recall window. So I wouldn't say it's 100% an issue, but it is aesthetic and it's just something to make note of. So another thing you're going to want to check is to make sure that this center locking differential does engage. It's not a big issue if you're not going to be doing a lot of off-roading, but basically what this is going to do is, because this is a four-wheel drive vehicle, it is always in four-wheel right here. It's going to be 30% in the front and 70% power in the rear. Locking that center differential is going to give you 50-50 front and rear. Now that's really good for off-roading, so it's definitely something you want to check if you're going to be doing that. And if it's never used, it's probably not going to work. But that doesn't always mean that it's not going to work, so it is good to check it. So what you're going to do is turn it on, put it in neutral, and then click this little center button right here. On some models, it'll be over on this side. I don't know what the difference is, but mine is down here. And what that's going to do is a little light will show up that will look like that symbol. If it keeps flashing and just keeps flashing for a while, it's not working. If it stops flashing and goes solid, then you will be able to engage it. I already knew that mine engaged because I got a video of it doing that before. But if you are able to check it out in person, that is one thing that I would definitely do before purchasing it. First thing that's an issue on mine, this light works, this one does not. I do not care. I will not fix that. This also does have a very deep cut right here on the fender. That is also something I will not be fixing. Now this is off-road specific, but this is a fairly large tire, a 285/75/17, a 34 by 11.2, I believe. It has a 0 offset. I would like it to have a little more offset for looks, but also because it is rubbing at full lock on the sway bar. So there's a couple things I could do. I could remove this sway bar if I wanted to with a little bit softer of a ride. I could get a wheel with a little bit more offset, or I could get Spider Tracks, a back spacing that would essentially just push this wheel and tire setup a little bit more out, and then potentially it wouldn't rub. But this is at full lock off-road. I'm not that concerned. It's not even really rubbing anything except for the dust off of it, so the same motion as me doing that is what it's doing to the sway bar. Now I can't really get to it from here, but there's also a cam piece of rubber that's kind of mashed, and that's somewhere up here. I can't really see it from my driveway, but I can replace that, and I'm going to replace that. It's just some cam tabs, and we'll replace that. No issues there. I'll have to do front and rear differential service, and probably going to need to do some transfer case service here in the next few months to a year. And I think that's pretty much it, except for the brakes. Now, I think these brakes feel perfectly fine, but I had a mechanic look at it and he said I should probably bleed those brakes, make sure everything's good, because he said it felt a little squishy. I think it feels fine, but I will actually listen to my mechanic and I will have that replaced, do that fluid service, and just make sure everything's braking fine, because this is a fairly heavy vehicle. So you can look here at 10, 15, 20, yada, yada. I am up to looking at a 105, so around 105,000 miles. This is kind of what I'm expecting. Tire rotation, oil filter change. I just did the oil at like 101, so I mean, that's pretty good. 105 is probably pretty nice. Check the belts, hoses, fluid leaks, all that. The only downside to this is I can only get it to go at 150,000 miles. And a lot of these are going to have way more miles than that. And at that point, you'll want to check the forums, which I would recommend you do anyway. GX470 is a good one. There's some other ones out there that are not off-road specific. And that way you can check those forums and make sure you know what to do for your service and make sure you keep it up to date.